I am so excited to be starting our day with this particular topic. As I mentioned to you just a few moments ago, this agenda is really about taking you on a journey. And so we're going to start with thinking about your own personal use cases. And as you know, most people are using AI right now to summarize, articles and emails and analyze data, and all of that is wonderful. But what we've learned is, of course, that there are a number of more creative ways to really make sure that you're getting the most out of the tool for yourself personally, and then, of course, for your organization. So to guide you on this journey, we have two people that we are very big fans of at Charter. Dan Shipper, he is the CEO and founder of Every. Every is a multimodal media organization. And Dan, you can tell us what multimodal means in just a moment. And he also writes a blog, would you say?
I wrote a column for Every.
For Every, called Chain of Thought. I have taken so much from this and probably maybe know too much about your brain from reading it, but I encourage you all to read it. He also has a wonderful podcast called AI and I that I encourage you to check out as well. And then we have James Chan. James Chan is a partner at Bloomberg Beta, and Bloomberg Beta is actually one of our investors.
We are indeed.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm glad that you're here. But I think what I love about what James does, just from an investor perspective, is one, he is focused on applying machine intelligence, or focused on investing in companies that are applying machine intelligence to businesses and society. He's also a software developer. So he comes to this world
with a mediocre software developer.
Are you? He's being modest. So I want to really just sort of set the stage for everybody here before we dive in. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how you're thinking about AI in the world. Dan, maybe we'll start with you and tell us a little bit about what multimodal means, because I think that probably shapes a lot of how you think about it.
Yeah, so I call Every a multimodal media company, which means we publish writing, we publish podcasts, we publish videos, and we publish software, which is a sort of unique combination for a media company. And for us, the way that we see the world is usually being a builder and being a writer are these like separate things done by separate organizations, or definitely separate parts of the organization. But AI is changing that a lot, and the lines between being a writer and being a builder are starting to blur. You can write English prompts and make software. And software is now so cheap to make that a lot of our best content is software that we put out into the world that spreads and that introduces people to Every. And so we found over time, at Every, we write a daily newsletter about what comes next in tech. And what we found over time is the best way to write that newsletter is to be hands-on building with these tools, using AI to do our writing or to even build things with it. And we started releasing those experiments to our audience, and that was both our best writing, and it engaged the audience in the products we were building. And so now we have this organization where we write a newsletter every day, and we incubate products. We have 4 product incubations out in the wild that we run internally, and we have a 10-person team. So you can go really, 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 really fast if you have generalist people inside your organization using AI every day to do these things and blur the boundaries between different parts of the organization that used to be separate.
Thank you. Yeah. And James, what about you? Can you tell us a little bit about how AI is, kind of coming together with the work that you're doing every day?
I mean, I think there are a couple of different angles. So I invest in startups, and sort of, I think software is like one of the greatest things that humanity's created, and sort of like one of those cases where we've all agreed to do something the same way, whether we're Ukrainian or Russian, whether we're Chinese or American. We've all kind of agreed to interpret numbers in the same way, which is sort of a miracle. So I believe in software. The second part about those, we've now are about 20 some years into this dominant business model for subscription software that came around because the web worked, right? And what's interesting about right now is that we're in the middle of a transition to something else. We don't know exactly what it looks like. And we actually, to be honest, don't even know whether it's going to be a good economic idea. That there is a way in which Microsoft and Bill Gates, because he was grouchy about 40 years ago, sort of set up a system that broke the rules of economics. That basically said something with a marginal cost of 0, you can charge lots of money for it, for a whole set of good reasons. And right now, we're all in this collective search to say, sort of as AI makes something like intelligence or whatever you want to call it ubiquitous, what is going to be a dominant business model that also create both value for the world and also not kill all of us and also be sustainable in a way that'll be interesting. And I think like that search is the thing we're all in the middle of. And the uncomfortable thing about it is that capital has moved in so quickly to this, like because everyone talks on Twitter and everyone's decided that there's lots of money to be made here, that we've all rushed in to like solidify a whole set of use cases. And that's sort of like the dangerous thing, because the moment you solidify on something, you get stuck with a set of ways of working. And we're still like really early, right? We're really early figuring out what's working. And so the funny thing for me is uh, like I am still in the middle of that journey every day of trying something slightly differently and sort of seeing whether it works or not. And sometimes it's very complicated. Sometimes it generates like a very clever like application I can build myself. And sometimes I'm just copying and pasting the chat session with my wife to figure out what I should have said to her, right? And I'm saying both of those work, right? That we're at this very weird time where these models do certain things much better and much worse than we expect, and we're all building this intuition. And so in that way, that's like sort of the fun thing about right now.
I want to add on to that. I really agree with that. I think things are changing so quickly, even from 2 years ago to now, that being in a place where you can experiment and play with these tools without having the like, I need to make it work for my business in a really big way.
Yeah.
I think is still really, really important. It's still
That's the high stakes game we're in the middle of, right? Because the whole stock market is banking on Microsoft figuring out how to charge me a little more money, right? We're all hoping that it really works out because we're all betting on it on the one hand. But at the same time that that's true, we're all sitting here thinking, if I could twist it a little bit differently, this might be the thing that actually works.
Yep.
And so in that way, like we're in a very weird time where like the guy who runs OpenAI, who everyone says is a genius, and you could be the one to discover the actual use case that works, because you have access to the exact same tools he's using right now, right? You know, he has a few secret things, but he's not really using it. He's actually just using the thing you're using right now, and we're all trying to figure it out.
I want to talk about that the power that we all have in our hands. And so just to kind of get people thinking beyond whatever toolkit they have at the moment, what are your most used AI tools like in a given week?
I mean, I think like what's interesting is that answer is like probably what you expect. I use ChatGPT like every day, multiple times a day. Specifically O1. I think the O1 model is incredible. I use Claude.
Okay, so now just to be clear, so the O1 model, like you have to pay for it and you have to click that button.
Yeah.
They don't default to it.
They don't default to
Why
it.
don't they default to it?
Because it's too expensive.
Right. So there is a little secret that you literally just have to click 2 buttons. So you have to click that little, like that list of models and O1, and then they'll lose a little more money.
Yeah,
but
it's way
keep it
better.
up.
Yeah,
Right.
it's a very different experience. Claude, which is another
Claude
model from Anthropic, which is just a little friendlier and brighter usually. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the other ones that are like maybe a little less well known, like one of my favorite ones, especially if we're thinking about leadership today, is this tool called Granola. Which basically it sits on my computer and it records all the meetings that I'm on and then transcribes them for me, but not in like an annoying way where it's like a bot that like joins my meeting and is like, you know, Dan's note taker or whatever. It's just like on my computer. So I have transcripts of all my meetings, which is really great. And that paired with O1 or Claude is really powerful. You said sometimes you throw a transcript of a conversation with your wife into
Don't tell her this.
into ChatGPT.
We're being recorded.
I do the same thing, honestly. It's really great for leadership stuff. You know, like I had someone come to me the other day who she was having a problem with one of her reports, like a personal problem, like one of those sort of sticky management issues that you run into all the time. She was like, "What do I do?" And I was like, did you granola it? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, send me the transcript. And I was like, okay, I'll think about it. And then I went to Claude and I was like, what would you do? It was helpful. It was so helpful. It was so helpful. And sometimes I even do that with like an entire day's worth of meetings. I can just throw that into Claude or O1 and be like, what do you notice about how I'm showing up, or what am I avoiding, or like if there are things that I'm working on as a leader. So like for me, like conflict avoidance, like are there things that I'm avoiding that I should be dealing with? And it's really, really insightful. I think one of the undersung things about this wave of AI is how empathetic and sensitive these tools are to like
Nuances.
nuances of social dynamics, which is so important if you're leading people.
I want to dive into that because I think it's a really important theme when you think about leadership and the way that we'll need to show up and lead when technology is front and center. But before I do that, James, anything that you're using differently than Dan in terms of your go-to tools?
Okay, so I have a couple of scripts that I'll run over and over again
Okay.
around checking the status of, like, looking through my email and checking the status of something, right? So like at any one time, we've got 50,000 projects we're all anxious about, right? And so I will have a script that runs through, finds those emails, and it says, hey, what's the status on this thing?
Yeah.
And so I'll do that. The other thing that I will do similar to this is, except it'll be with Gemini, where like I will paste in very large chunks of text and then ask it to synthesize it or describe it. And then the other thing, which like honestly people should just do all the time, is first everyone should subscribe to Every, and then everyone should just pay for YouTube like Premium. And then like I do find that copying the transcript from YouTube podcasts or talks, pasting it into Gemini or Claude, and then asking it questions is something I basically do maybe 5 times a day, right? Because there's always like, you're gonna meet someone, Kevin said something really smart on some YouTube video, and I'm like, oh, what's the interesting thing that Kevin said out of this, right? And I think like that sort of thing I do constantly. And it's like one of those funny things where, just to show you how like the disconnect that we're living with right now, like on YouTube, Gemini will not let you do it directly, but you can go to YouTube, copy the transcript, paste it in, and ask the same question, and it works right now. And then they'll figure it out at some point. But like right now, like you probably have better ideas about what to do with these models than product managers at Google, Microsoft, and Facebook.
Yeah.
I realized also you lobbed me a softball and I did not. I failed to take advantage, which I shall say.
Shows lower EQ than the overtime.
Yeah, if I had Claude, it would be like, you need
better EQ than most
other tools that I use, and I'm bringing this up because I think it's helpful to understand some of the things you can accomplish with a small team. The other tools I use are the things that we incubate in-house, and I think 2 of them are actually quite relevant to people here. One is this tool called Quora, which manages my email for me, and what Quora does is it sits in my inbox, and when an email comes in, it decides whether or not I need to respond to it. If it's something I need to respond to, it makes it to my inbox. For everything else, it automatically archives it, and then twice a day I get a beautiful digest of all the things that would show up in my inbox that I need to see, but I don't need to respond to. And that's like 80 to 90% of my email, and most people's emails. So I just scroll through it, and then I'm done. And that is, I get a lot of leverage out of that because I don't have to spend time like archiving or replying to emails that don't mean anything to me. And that is a tool that we built that is run by one person on our team.
Wow.
Which it previously, like 2 years ago, it would have been completely impossible because like the ability to summarize that content into something that was usable was just not possible. But even if that was solved, like it would have taken a team of people to do, and we do this with one person, and we have several other products like that, and it's really remarkable what you can do.
Part of what's just interesting about that, though, is like in that case, it's a mix of software plus the model, and like the models are fuzzy, right? They're like kind of like they've got common sense, they kind of don't, and there's a way in which like people spend so much time right now trying to tame those models, and it kind of misses the point, right? That like for every application where you're worried about hallucination, it's probably the wrong application, right? And so there's a way right now where like we're all like the right attitude should be figuring out what these things are good at rather than trying to fit them into some shoehorn of how we used to think about traditional software.
Yeah. And that's what I want to move now to think about, not just thinking about the tradition of what the technology should be good at or shouldn't be good at, but also for us. So your roles, how have they changed and evolved over the last couple of years with AI? Like what is different? And you brought up just like the idea of using, these models to maybe enhance your EQ. I think one thing that's for sure is that in my perspective, and we've heard people say this, like leadership, our ability to actually connect with people, be intentional, demonstrate that EQ effectively is going to matter more than ever. They're called soft skills and misnomered in my opinion, because they are the hard skills. They're the things that people have such a difficult time doing, which is why we're asking Claude, right? Or whomever. So What's different?
That's a really big one, and that should not be understated. Like how much having an infinite resource of like EQ is.
Yeah.
I think another big one for me is like it's not just EQ; it's like any kind of knowledge you want. And I'm a writer. Like I want to write about interesting things, and like I am able to read and consume like so much more difficult things than I could before because I have someone that can explain it to me, and I don't have to like go to grad school for it, which is a really, really big deal. And then I think the last thing that has been super important for me and just for us at Every is as a CEO, you generally can't make things because your attention is divided. Um, and we're entering a world where you can build things with divided attention. In the same way, like as a CEO, like you may like maybe you have an engineering team and you can like send a Slack to them and be like, hey, like I want you to do X, Y, Z, and then they go do it and it comes back and you look at it and you can do that while you're doing dishes. Everyone can do that now because a lot of these models, if you're programming with them, you can say, hey, I want you to go build this. It'll go off and build something. It won't be perfect, but it'll come back and you can do that while you're doing like 5 other things. And so for me, because like part of the whole thing that we're doing is we spend a lot of time experimenting, like I'm constantly experimenting and building things that I just would not have the time or focus or attention to do 2 years ago.
Let me double tap on that. Are there any things that maybe you've completely stopped doing now with AI? Like, can you feel safe, comfortable stepping back and saying, this is not the best use of my time?
Like in the organization or
Anything.
is there anything that I've stopped doing? Googling? I don't really, I don't know if I have a good answer to that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And James, what about you? Like, where are you sort of seeing a shift in how you work or how you think about where you need to maybe increase your skill set or say, I'm fine with this because I know that I have a support?
Right. I think that so I'm in the middle of hiring a new associate to work with me, right? And it's interesting because the things that I used to relying on that person in the past are very different now. Because in the past, I don't know, you're trying to research this or that, and maybe you ask them to do the work first. But it's true now that I don't know if it's 2 a.m. on a Saturday, like I feel a little awkward calling my associate, but I don't feel awkward at all, sort of like chatting with Claude. So that's on the one hand. On the other hand, like now the people who work for me, to be honest, like the bar is just much higher, right? The set of things that they do, the polish that they have with it is just fundamentally different. And so it's been really shocking to me, to be honest, to talk to like 24-year-olds who are just so accomplished and so good at their work now, or good at using Claude to generate their work, right? And it's just been really interesting. It's like I've been surprised and really impressed by how much productivity gain there has been sort of with folks on the ground, right? For folks like individual contributors. And I mean, I on the one hand, I believe that managers will be great and they'll take advantage of AI tools and be wonderful and blah, 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 blah. On the other hand, my lived experience is that the 23-year-old is using this much, much more in a much, much more native way than like even my smartest 45-year-old manager.
Yeah. What do you think is at the core of that? And
Time.
Okay.
The fact that you're not in 20 meetings, the
Fair.
fact that you're not in like 20 meetings that overlap, like all that sort of stuff, right?
How do time aside, because that's harder to get back. But the thing that I have learned the most about the two of you, just in understanding your work prior to this, our prep call, you both have an innate curiosity. Like again, it shouldn't be understated. The desire to say, I just got in an argument or there's some sort of spat between me and my partner, and I'm going to take that text chain and put it into ChatGPT. Everybody doesn't do that. And I think we all know many leaders who are just like, they're not curious. They're kind of like, this is how it is. We see it playing out on center stage.
Yeah.
And so how can we activate that? Because it seems that when people take this to the next level, take AI to the next level, like there's an innate curiosity.
Okay, so now admittedly, I'm a VC, so I invest in early stage startups, right? So like at my core, I believe in the ability of individuals to create something new, unfettered by some big organization, right? And so there's a part of me that says, well, the real answer is like, if you're a manager who's really figured out how to use AI, you probably should start your own company and talk to me, right? So like that's a slightly self-serving answer, to be honest, right? But at the same time, I do think there's a way in which we're in a very uncomfortable place for corporate America right now, where basically AI has made every executive a hypocrite, on the one hand, they've got to follow whatever the legal team is saying, right? And on the other hand, they actually want to get something interesting done. I don't really know how to resolve that right now until like it feels like there are a couple clear log jams internally that have to be broken so that the executive could actually lead in a way that doesn't like drive their poor general counsel crazy. And so that's probably like, I feel like that's as much around the general counsel understanding the situation as it is about the executive.
Your take?
We do a lot of work with big companies doing AI consulting, training, and adoption stuff. And so I've seen this play out a lot. I think in general, people fall into three buckets in an organization. Like 10% of people are early adopters, and that's a lot of young people, but it's sort of across age ranges. It's just sort of like, are you that kind of like wants to try new things person? And they're out there just on the front lines, like figuring out ways to do this in their job. 10% of people are like, I will never touch this, and then 80% are like, I will do this if you like tell me what to do. And those people are faced with this challenge every day of, I either can get my job done in the way that I know how and know that it will get done in the limited time that I have, or I can take a risk on a new tool and then get 2 hours behind when it doesn't work, and then I'm going to be working late, and I don't want to do that, which makes total sense. And so I think the organizations that end up doing this well, one is they give those 80% of people time to experiment and play around with these things in sort of like a risk-free way. They arm those people with workflows that they know work, so that they don't have to like mess around with the model and risk like getting behind their job. And the way they do that is they leverage the early adopters that are already playing around with it to see the things that they've figured out about like how to make this work in their jobs, and then they spread it throughout the rest of the organization. And it works fundamentally best when leaders are playing around with the tools themselves, because
in public, high-profile ways.
exactly, because the thing that you can always tell when you get on the phone with a leader at a big company and they're like, they think that the AI is God, and they're just like, yeah, I'll just like, we just press a button and it just does all the work, and you're just like, it's not gonna work, and you will fundamentally be disappointed. And I think we're seeing that now. It's like a lot of people like thought it was going to be God. Maybe they have like a whole working group that has been planning what the AI stuff is gonna do, and they haven't really done very much. And the organizations where the CEO or whoever's leading is in the tool every single day, those organizations are able to make much better decisions about where it actually can be leveraged in a realistic way that will actually work.
The one tell I have, I'm sorry.
I'm going to pause us just because we're out of time, but time's a thing we can't get back. AI can't help us there. But I want to thank you so much, Dan and James. This has been a wonderful conversation. There's just so much more to learn, but one thing I just want to double down on here is just, you have to play around. Otherwise, like telling people to jump into the wild without guardrails, without an understanding of how we can really think about taking this tech and saying, how can we make the most of it for the work that we're doing? How can we attach it to the strategy that we have? It kind of feels like it's neglectful in ways. And so I encourage you to get started. Maybe just start with yourself. That's the thing that I really love. Like, what does this thing say about me? We have another charter, he might be here, Anthony Onesto. I saw he posted something maybe about a month ago saying that he like asked ChatGPT, out of all the questions I asked you, like, tell me, give me some feedback about myself. And I think it's that curiosity that can really get us moving in the right direction. So thank you so much for joining us.